She healed a Lakota warrior in secret. Now they were both marked for death. Winter had settled over the northern plains like a heavy blanket, turning the land silent and unforgiving. The snow stretched across the open fields, broken only by the dark lines of bare trees and the distant shapes of small cabins scattered along the edge of the frontier town. The wind carried sharp cold that cut through coats and skin alike, and most people stayed indoors once the sun began to fade. Life here was already hard, but the tension between settlers, soldiers, and nearby Lakota bands made everything feel heavier, as if danger was always waiting just beyond sight. Eliza lived slightly apart from the town, her small wooden cabin resting near a frozen creek surrounded by tall grass now hidden beneath snow. People described her as quiet and strange, but they still came to her when they were sick or hurt. She had learned healing from her father long ago, and she believed that pain did not care about a person's background or allegiance. Some respected her for that. Others whispered that she should choose a side. That evening she worked beside the fire, grinding dried herbs into powder while a kettle warmed slowly above the flames. Outside, the sky darkened into deep blue, and the wind pushed against the walls with a low, restless sound. She expected another long, quiet night. A sudden noise broke the silence. It was faint, like something shifting against the woodpile outside her cabin. At first she ignored it, assuming it was an animal searching for shelter, but the sound came again, heavier this time, followed by a weak thud. She paused, listening carefully, her hands still. Many people would have stayed inside. Patrols had been moving through the area, and rumors about violence between soldiers and Lakota warriors had spread quickly. Anyone wandering at night could bring trouble. Yet something about the sound felt wrong, not like an animal but like someone struggling. She took a lantern and wrapped a thick shawl around her shoulders before opening the door. The cold rushed in immediately, stealing warmth from the room. Snow crunched beneath her boots as she stepped toward the woodpile. At first she saw nothing but shadow. Then the lantern light revealed a shape on the ground, a man lying half buried in snow, his body still except for shallow breathing. Eliza froze. Even before she saw his face clearly, she recognized the clothing and markings that told her he was Lakota. His shoulder was dark with dried blood, and frost had begun to gather along the edges of his hair. He must have collapsed only moments earlier. Her heart pounded. Helping him could change everything. The soldiers had warned the townspeople not to aid any Lakota fighters, claiming it would be treated as an act against the law. People had already been questioned for less. She hesitated, fear pressing against her chest. Then she saw his chest rise weakly. An instinct took over. She set the lantern down and knelt beside him, brushing snow away from his face. His skin felt cold, dangerously cold, and his breathing was uneven.
Without help, he would not survive the night.
"Stay with me," she whispered softly, though she was unsure if he understood.
It took all her strength to pull him toward the cabin. She dragged him carefully, stopping often to catch her breath. The wind bit at her hands, but she refused to stop until she reached the door. Inside, she closed it quickly, shutting out the cold and the world beyond. The warrior remained unconscious as she laid him near the fire. She removed his outer layers carefully, working quickly but respectfully. The wound on his shoulder looked deep, possibly from a blade or bullet grazing too close. She cleaned it gently, mixing herbs into warm water before pressing cloth against the injury. Hours passed as she worked. The fire crackled, casting shifting shadows across the room. Outside, the storm grew stronger, hiding all sound beyond the walls. Eventually, his eyes opened. They were sharp, despite exhaustion, and they moved quickly around the room before settling on her. He tried to sit up, but pain forced him back down. His expression held caution, even fear. "It's all right," she said calmly, raising her hands slightly to show she meant no harm. "You are safe here, for now." He watched her closely, understanding little of her words, but sensing her tone. After a moment he relaxed slightly, though tension remained in his posture. He spoke quietly in his own language, voice rough and strained. She shook her head gently. "I don't understand," she admitted. They sat in silence for a while. communicating only through small gestures. She offered water, and he accepted slowly, watching her every movement. Trust came slowly between strangers, especially when both knew the risks. As the fire burned low, she added more wood and studied him carefully. He was strong even in weakness, carrying a presence that suggested leadership or experience. This was not an ordinary traveler. Outside, the wind continued to howl, but inside the cabin warmth returned gradually. Eliza knew she had crossed a line that could not be undone. If anyone discovered him here, she would be forced to answer difficult questions. Yet looking at him now, pale and struggling to breathe, she felt no regret. Morning arrived slowly, light creeping through frost-covered windows. The warrior slept deeply, his breathing more steady than before. She checked the wound again and felt relief that the bleeding had stopped. The quiet moment did not last. From far away, she heard voices and the faint sound of horses. Patrols were moving through the area again. Her stomach tightened. She moved quickly, covering him with blankets and adjusting the room to look ordinary. Anyone passing by should see nothing unusual. Still, fear lingered. When he woke again later, he watched her more carefully, curiosity replacing some of the earlier caution. He pointed to himself and spoke his name slowly. She repeated it, unsure of the pronunciation but trying. A faint smile appeared on his face, brief but real. She told him her name in return. It felt like the first step toward understanding. Throughout the day, she continued caring for him while listening closely for any signs of visitors. Every knock of wind against the walls made her tense. Every distant sound felt like approaching danger. Yet between those moments, something unexpected grew. A quiet connection built through shared silence and small acts of kindness. As evening approached again, the sky turned pale pink behind distant hills. The world looked peaceful from outside, but Eliza knew that peace was fragile. Somewhere beyond the snow-covered plains, people searched for a wounded warrior. And inside her cabin she had chosen to protect him. She did not know yet that this choice would mark both of their lives forever. Morning light crept slowly into the cabin through thin curtains covered with frost. The fire had burned low during the night, leaving soft orange embers glowing quietly. Eliza woke before sunrise, as she usually did, listening to the silence around her. For a moment she forgot everything, thinking it was just another cold day on the frontier. Then she saw the figure resting near the fire and remembered the choice she had made. The Lakota warrior was awake, watching her carefully. His eyes were calmer than before, though pain still showed in his face when he moved. She offered him a small nod and began preparing warm water and herbs without speaking much. Words between them were still limited, but understanding was growing slowly through gestures and patience. He tried to sit up again, more determined this time. She moved closer, helping him carefully. He gave a quiet breath of relief once he was upright, though he remained weak. She handed him a cup of warm broth, and he accepted it with gratitude, nodding slightly before drinking. Outside, the snow reflected pale light, making the world look peaceful even though tension lay beneath the surface. Eliza listened carefully for any sounds of riders or voices. The patrols had not returned yet, but she knew it was only a matter of time. The warrior studied the cabin, noticing the shelves of herbs, dried plants hanging from beams, and small tools arranged neatly along the walls. He seemed curious, touching one of the bundles gently. She explained slowly, using simple words and gestures, showing how each plant helped in different ways. Though language remained a barrier, he seemed to understand her purpose. He pointed toward the wound on his shoulder and spoke quietly. She listened, recognizing a few words he repeated often. Slowly she began to understand that he was not only a fighter but someone trusted among his people. There was dignity in his posture even while injured, as if he carried responsibilities beyond himself. Throughout the day she changed the bandage and checked for signs of fever. The wound was healing but still fragile. When she cleaned it, he remained still, showing strength and patience. At times he closed his eyes, perhaps remembering how he received the injury. She did not ask questions he could not answer easily. Later he noticed a small carving near the window, a wooden figure shaped like a bird. He picked it up carefully, examining it with interest. She explained that her father had carved it many years ago. He listened quietly, and though he could not understand every word, he seemed to recognize the emotion behind her voice. Trust began forming in small moments like these. By afternoon, he insisted on standing again. She tried to stop him, worried he would reopen the wound, but he gently shook his head. With slow effort, he rose to his feet. For a brief moment, pride showed in his expression, but pain quickly followed. He steadied himself against the wall, breathing deeply. She moved closer, ready to catch him if he fell. After a few steps, he sat back down, understanding his limits. A faint smile appeared on his face, as if acknowledging her concern. Outside, distant sounds broke the quiet, faint voices carried by wind. Eliza froze, listening carefully. Horses. More than one. Her heart began to race. She quickly helped him lie down again, covering him with blankets. She moved around the cabin, making sure nothing looked unusual. The warrior watched her, sensing the change in her mood. She pointed toward the door and made a motion showing danger. He nodded slowly, understanding enough to remain silent. The riders passed by without stopping, their voices fading into the distance. Only when silence returned did she allow herself to breathe normally again. That evening, as the fire burned brighter, they shared a simple meal. He tried to help by preparing something from the supply she gave him. Watching him work carefully, she realized he was not used to being helpless. Even injured, he wanted to contribute. He spoke more that night, telling short stories through gestures and simple words. She understood pieces, references to family, to land, to long journeys across open plains. His eyes changed when he spoke about his people, filled with pride, but also sadness. She shared small pieces of her own life too, growing up near different towns, learning healing from her father, and how she chose to stay alone rather than follow expectations others had for her. Though language limited details, they both listened closely, trying to understand not just words but meaning. Outside, the sky cleared, revealing stars bright against the cold darkness. The world felt calm for a moment, as if nothing beyond the cabin mattered. But danger never stayed far away. The next morning brought new challenges. A neighbor approached unexpectedly, knocking on the door while carrying a basket of supplies. Eliza felt a sudden wave of fear, but forced herself to remain calm. She stepped outside quickly, closing the door behind her to block the view inside. The neighbor spoke about increased patrols and rumors that a wounded Lakota warrior had escaped nearby. Soldiers were offering rewards for information. Eliza listened carefully, hiding her reaction. She thanked the neighbor and returned inside once he left. The warrior watched her face closely, sensing the tension. She explained through gestures that people were searching for him. He nodded, unsurprised. For the first time, he tried to leave. He struggled to stand, determined despite pain. She understood his intention. He wanted to protect her by leaving before he brought danger to her home. She stepped in front of him, shaking her head firmly. His wound was not healed enough, and traveling now could cost him his life. They stood in silence for a long moment, both understanding the risk but unsure of the right choice. Finally, he sat down again, accepting her judgment. Days passed slowly. The bond between them grew stronger, built through shared effort and quiet understanding. She noticed how carefully he treated every object, how he showed respect for the space she had given him. He noticed how tirelessly she worked, rarely resting even when exhausted. Outside, winter continued and rumors grew louder. People in town spoke more openly about fear and suspicion. Patrols passed closer to her cabin, sometimes stopping briefly before moving on. Each passing day felt like borrowed time. One evening, as they sat near the fire, he took a small object from around his neck, a simple piece of leather with a carved symbol. He handed it to her gently, as if offering trust itself. She accepted it carefully, unsure of its meaning but understanding its importance. In that moment, the distance between them felt smaller. They were no longer just healer and patient, or strangers divided by conflict. They had become allies, connected by shared survival and quiet respect. Yet both knew that healing the wound was only the beginning. The world outside still waited, filled with people who would not understand what had grown inside this small cabin. The days moved forward slowly, marked by the steady rhythm of healing and quiet caution. Snow still covered the plains, but the air began to feel slightly different, as if winter was slowly losing its strength. Inside the cabin, warmth and routine created a small world separate from the tension outside. The warrior's strength continued to return. He could now stand for longer periods and walk carefully across the room without support. Eliza watched him closely each time he moved, ready to help if needed. Though he still felt pain, his determination was clear. He disliked feeling weak and wanted to regain his independence. They spoke more often now, creating a shared language from simple English words, gestures, and patience. He taught her small phrases from his own language, and she repeated them carefully, sometimes laughing at her mistakes. Those moments brought lightness into a situation filled with uncertainty. One morning he stepped outside briefly for the first time since arriving. Eliza stayed near the door, watching him carefully. The cold air touched his face, and he closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply as if reconnecting with the land itself. Snow stretched endlessly in every direction, silent and beautiful. But even in that peaceful moment, both of them knew that safety was fragile. They returned inside quickly to avoid drawing attention. Later that afternoon, a sudden knock came at the door. Eliza's heart jumped. She exchanged a quick glance with the warrior, and he moved quietly toward the corner where he could remain hidden. She opened the door slowly, finding a young boy standing there with his father. The boy looked pale and weak, leaning heavily against the man beside him. The father spoke urgently, explaining that the child had become very sick overnight. Fever, weakness, and trouble breathing had left them desperate. They had come because Eliza was known as someone who could help when others could not. Without hesitation, she invited them inside. The warrior remained hidden but watched carefully. Eliza examined the boy gently, feeling his forehead and checking his breathing. She moved quickly, preparing herbs and warm water while speaking calmly to ease the father's worry. The situation felt serious. She realized she needed something more, knowledge that she did not fully have. The herbs she normally used were not enough for what she saw. For a moment she hesitated, then glanced toward the warrior's hiding place. He understood immediately. Stepping forward slowly, he revealed himself. The father froze, surprised, but Eliza raised her hand gently, signaling trust. She explained quickly that he was helping her. The warrior examined the child carefully. His movements were calm and respectful. He asked for certain plants using gestures, and Eliza recognized some from her own supplies. Together they prepared a mixture combining both their traditions. Time passed slowly as they worked side by side. The father watched silently, unsure but willing to trust because he had no other choice. The boy's breathing remained uneven at first, but gradually it began to calm. After several hours, his fever started to lower slightly. Relief filled the room. Eliza felt a deep sense of gratitude toward the warrior. Without his help, she might not have known what to do. She realized again how much knowledge existed beyond what she had been taught. When the father prepared to leave, he thanked her many times. His eyes showed surprise but also respect toward the warrior, though no words passed between them. An unspoken understanding seemed to form. Once they were alone again, Eliza felt both relief and new worry. Allowing the warrior to reveal himself had been necessary, but it also increased risk. News traveled quickly in small communities. The warrior seemed aware of this. He watched the window quietly, thoughtful. Over the next few days, the child's condition improved, and word spread that Eliza had saved another life. People spoke about her skill with renewed admiration, but some also began asking questions about unusual herbs or unfamiliar methods she had used. One afternoon, a woman from town visited casually, pretending to check on Eliza while clearly searching for something. Her eyes moved around the room carefully. Eliza stayed calm, answering politely while guiding the conversation away from anything suspicious. After the visitor left, tension filled the cabin again. The warrior spoke quietly, trying to explain that danger was growing. Though language limited his words, his meaning was clear. He pointed toward himself and then toward the door, suggesting that he should leave soon to protect her.
Eliza shook her head firmly. His wound had healed well, but not completely.
Traveling alone across the plains still carried great risk, especially with patrols searching for him. Days passed in uneasy balance. They continued working together, preparing food, tending the fire, and sharing stories through simple conversation. The bond between them grew deeper, not rushed, not dramatic, but built slowly through trust. One evening they walked outside together for a short time. The sky glowed orange as the sun set behind distant hills. Snow sparkled under fading light, creating a quiet beauty that almost made them forget the danger surrounding them. He pointed toward the horizon, describing something about his people moving across the land. She listened carefully, imagining vast journeys and strong communities tied closely to nature. She shared how settlers often built fences and boundaries, tried to make permanent homes in a place that felt endless. They both realized how different their worlds had been, yet how similar their hopes were. Later that night, Eliza noticed fresh tracks near the cabin. Boots, more than one person. Her heart tightened. The tracks circled part of the area before disappearing into the distance. Someone had come close, perhaps searching quietly, without wanting to be seen.
Inside, she told the warrior what she had found.
He remained calm but alert, understanding that their time might be running out. The air between them felt heavier, filled with unspoken questions about what would happen next. The following morning brought more signs of trouble. Riders passed closer than before, voices louder, searching more carefully. One of them stopped briefly near the path leading to her cabin before moving on. Eliza felt watched. Despite the growing danger, she continued her work, helping people who came for treatment. The warrior assisted quietly when he could, sharing small pieces of knowledge that strengthened her healing. Through these moments, their partnership deepened. They were no longer just strangers brought together by circumstance. They had become allies, learning from each other and building something meaningful, despite the uncertainty around them. Yet both sensed that the fragile peace could not last forever. The world outside was closing in slowly, and soon they would need to make choices that would change everything. The quiet routine that Eliza and the warrior had built inside the cabin began to feel fragile, as if it could break at any moment. Each day brought small signs that the outside world was moving closer. Riders passed more often along the distant path. Voices carried farther through the cold air. Even the animals seemed restless, sensing tension that humans could not always see clearly. Eliza woke one morning with a feeling she could not ignore. The sky outside looked clear, but the silence felt different, heavy and waiting. She stepped outside briefly to gather wood, scanning the horizon carefully. Nothing moved nearby, yet she could not shake the feeling of being watched. Inside, the warrior noticed her unease immediately. Over the past days, he had learned to read her expressions just as she had learned to understand his. He moved closer, asking quietly what was wrong. She explained about the silence and her growing worry. He nodded slowly, agreeing without needing many words.
They both knew something was coming. They both knew something was coming.
Later that morning, the sound of approaching horses broke the stillness. This time the riders did not pass by. Hoofbeats slowed and stopped near the cabin. Eliza's heart pounded. She looked at the warrior, and they shared a brief moment of understanding. Hiding might not be enough anymore. Still, she motioned for him to stay back while she moved towards the door. A firm knock followed. She opened it slowly, forcing herself to appear calm. Two soldiers stood outside, their expressions serious, but not openly hostile. Snow dusted their coats, and their horses waited behind them. They greeted her politely but with clear purpose. One of them explained that they were searching for a wounded Lakota warrior believed to be hiding nearby. They asked if she had seen anyone or noticed unusual activity. Eliza answered carefully, choosing her words with precision. She spoke truthfully about seeing patrols and hearing rumors, but avoided anything that could reveal the truth inside her cabin. Her voice remained steady, even as fear pressed against her chest. The soldiers asked to step inside. For a moment, time seemed to slow. She knew refusing might raise suspicion, yet allowing them inside meant risking everything. After a brief pause, she stepped aside. The warrior had already moved quietly, standing where he could not be seen immediately. The soldiers entered slowly, their eyes scanning the room. They noticed the herbs, the simple furniture, and the warmth of the fire. One of them began asking more questions about her work as a healer. She answered calmly, describing the people she helped and the supplies she used. Every word felt like walking across thin ice. Then one soldier's gaze shifted toward the corner where the warrior stood partially hidden behind hanging blankets. Silence filled the room. The warrior stepped forward slowly before anyone could react further. His posture was straight, calm, and strong despite the injury. He did not reach for anything or show aggression. Instead, he stood with quiet dignity. The soldiers reacted with surprise, but did not immediately move closer. The moment felt fragile, balanced between many possible outcomes. Eliza stepped beside him, refusing to stand apart. She explained quickly that she had found him injured and had only helped him survive. She spoke about her role as a healer, saying she could not leave someone to die in the snow. One soldier looked uncertain, glancing between her and the warrior. The other appeared more strict, reminding her of the rules against aiding those considered enemies. The conversation remained tense but controlled. The warrior spoke softly in his own language, his tone calm. Though the soldiers did not understand his words fully, they sensed he was not threatening them. Minutes passed slowly. Very unexpectedly, the sound of another voice came from outside. The door opened again, revealing a man from the town, the father whose child had been saved weeks earlier. He had followed the patrol after hearing they were heading toward Eliza's cabin. He spoke with urgency, telling the soldiers how she had saved his child's life. He described how both she and the warrior had worked together to help when no one else could. His voice carried deep gratitude. More voices followed as 2 other townspeople arrived, curious about the commotion. Some supported Eliza, speaking about her kindness and how she had helped many people without judgment. Others remained silent, unsure how to react. The situation changed slowly. The soldiers seemed less certain now, caught between orders and the respect the townspeople showed toward Eliza. One soldier finally spoke, saying they would report what they had found but would not take immediate action. He warned her that the situation remained dangerous and that others might not be as understanding. When they left, tension lingered in the air like a storm that had not fully passed. Eliza sat down heavily, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. The warrior remained calm but thoughtful, knowing that this moment marked a turning point. Their secret was no longer safe. Over the next days, the atmosphere around the cabin shifted. Some people came quietly to show support, bringing supplies or offering kind words. Others avoided her completely, whispering about danger and divided loyalties. The warrior and Eliza spoke long into the evenings, trying to decide what to do next. He felt responsible for the risk she faced, while she believed that leaving someone in need had never been an option. One evening, news arrived that tensions between soldiers and Lakota groups were increasing nearby. The warrior understood that he was being searched for not only because of his escape, but also because of who he was among his people. His presence in the area could bring trouble to anyone connected to him. The realization settled heavily between them. Staying in the cabin no longer felt safe. Eliza walked outside alone that night, looking up at the stars. The cold air cleared her thoughts. She knew that life in the town might never return to normal after this. Even if she stayed, suspicion would follow her. When she returned inside, she found the warrior waiting quietly. Their eyes met, and without many words, they understood the same truth. Soon they would have to leave everything behind. The fire burned low as they began preparing for what came next, knowing that the path ahead would be uncertain but necessary. The night felt colder than usual, even with the fire burning steadily inside the cabin. Eliza sat quietly, watching the flames move slowly while thinking about everything that had changed. Only a short time ago, her life had been simple and predictable. Now every choice felt heavy, leading her toward a future she had never planned. The warrior sat across from her, preparing small supplies carefully. He moved with purpose, showing that he had already accepted what needed to be done. Though his wound had healed enough for travel, Eliza still worried about the long journey ahead. The plains were wide and unforgiving, especially during winter. Outside, the sky was clear and filled with bright stars. The silence felt deep, almost peaceful, but both of them knew that staying any longer would only bring more danger. Word had spread about the warrior's presence. Even if some people supported Eliza, others would continue to question her choices. They began packing slowly. Eliza gathered herbs, tools, and a few personal belongings she could not leave behind. Each item held memories: her father's carving, the worn book of healing notes, small containers filled with carefully dried plants. She paused often, realizing how much of her life she was leaving behind. The warrior noticed her hesitation and spoke softly, offering quiet reassurance. Though their words were limited by language, his tone carried understanding. He knew what it meant to leave familiar ground. Before dawn, a soft knock came at the door. Eliza opened it cautiously and found the father whose child she had helped standing outside. He held a small bundle of supplies and spoke quickly, saying he had heard rumors that more patrols would arrive soon. He wanted to help her leave safely before that happened. His kindness filled her with gratitude. He offered directions toward a safer route away from the main roads and gave them extra food for the journey. As he left, he thanked her again, saying that what she had done for his child would never be forgotten. The sky began to lighten as they stepped outside together. Eliza took one last look at the cabin, the place where she had lived, worked, and built a quiet life. Snow covered the roof, and smoke still rose faintly from the chimney. She felt sadness, but also a strange sense of relief, as if she was finally moving toward something unknown, but meaningful. They began walking before the sun rose, fully, moving across the frozen plains with careful steps. The warrior guided their direction, choosing paths that avoided open areas. The cold air stung their faces, but the steady movement kept them warm. Hours passed in silence. The landscape stretched endlessly around them. Wide fields of snow, distant hills, and occasional clusters of trees. The journey felt long but calm, giving Eliza time to reflect. She realized that helping him had changed her understanding of the world. Before, she had seen conflict mostly through stories told by others. Now she had listened directly to someone from a different life, someone who carried both strength and kindness despite hardship. As they traveled, the warrior pointed out small signs in the land, tracks hidden under snow, the shape of clouds signaling weather changes, and the direction of wind. Eliza watched closely, learning from him just as he had learned from her healing. By afternoon, they stopped near a small group of trees to rest. Eliza prepared warm tea using melted snow and herbs she carried. The warrior watched with interest, asking questions through gestures. Sharing these moments made the journey feel lighter. Later that day, they noticed distant riders far behind them. Though the riders were too far to identify, the sight reminded them that time was still limited. They moved forward again, choosing a faster pace. As evening approached, they reached an area where the land changed slightly, rising into gentle hills. The warrior seemed more confident here, recognizing familiar terrain. He explained that they were getting closer to areas where his people might be found. They camped under the open sky that night, building a small fire hidden among rocks. Eliza felt both nervous and excited. This was the first time she had slept outside in such open land, far from the comfort of her cabin. The warrior shared stories quietly, pointing to stars and describing meanings connected to them. Though she could not understand every word, she felt connected to the moment, as if she was stepping into a new world. The next day brought new challenges. The wind grew stronger, and snow began falling lightly. Traveling became slower, but they continued steadily. Eliza's legs felt tired, yet she refused to complain. Each step forward felt like a promise to herself. By late afternoon, they saw figures in the distance. Several people approached cautiously, watching them carefully. The warrior raised his hand in greeting, speaking loudly enough for them to hear. Recognition spread among the group, and relief appeared on their faces. Eliza stayed slightly behind, unsure how she would be received. The newcomer spoke quickly with the warrior, checking his condition and asking questions. Their expression showed both concern and respect. One of them turned toward Eliza, studying her carefully. The moment felt long, filled with uncertainty. The warrior spoke to them about her, explaining how she had helped him and protected him when he was injured. Slowly, the tension eased. One woman stepped forward, offering Eliza a warm blanket and a small smile. Though words were few, the gesture spoke clearly. They traveled together toward a nearby camp, where Eliza saw tents arranged carefully across the land. People moved with quiet purpose. Children played near fires, and elders watched with calm expressions. At first, she felt like an outsider. But as days passed, she began helping where she could, using her healing knowledge alongside traditional methods she learned from others. The exchange of ideas created mutual respect. The warrior returned gradually to his role among his people, though he never forgot the journey they had taken together. He often stayed near Eliza, helping translate and ensuring she felt welcome. Time moved forward, bringing changes neither of them had expected. Eliza realized that she had not lost her purpose by leaving her cabin. She had expanded it. She was now part of something larger, bridging two worlds through compassion and shared learning. The story did not end with dramatic victory or grand celebration. Instead, it settled into quiet strength. Two people who had chosen empathy over fear, finding new paths together despite the challenges around them. As the season slowly changed, the memory of the small cabin remained with Eliza, but she no longer felt tied to it. She had carried its spirit with her, the belief that healing belonged to everyone, no matter where they came from.